Hello there guys, and welcome back to the channel. So in today's video I'm going to be trying my best to give my personal answer, my personal opinion on a question that I get asked in virtually every stream for several weeks now. Who's better, Omega Sentinel or Nimrod? Or in this case, which one do I prefer? Because that is the one that mainly people ask. Or who should I rank, Omega Sentinel and Nimrod? Now, I am fortunate enough to have both of these champions at a 6-star rank 4 SIG 200 level. So basically as buff and tough as they can exist in this game. And we're going to go over comparison of their abilities. Now, this isn't going to be a gameplay type of video. This is going to be pure breakdown of their abilities and pros and cons against one another. I hope to make a full-on side-by-side gameplay comparison in the near future on these two guys as well. Before we get there, though, I want to remind that we are still doing Quicksilver giveaway. You have until Tuesday to record a duel against my account using your 3-star Quicksilver and win the fight. And then send it over to oliverporte at Evizone. And then you will qualify for potentially winning one of the 5 Quicksilver Early Access bundles that I am going to be giving away live on Tuesday. So definitely do not miss out on an amazing chance to get a free Quicksilver. Right, but that being said, let's get to the business. So obviously, both Omega Sentinel and Nimrod have a lot of things in common. Both of them pretty much destroy all of the mutants, with a couple of exceptions. Both get more potent abilities against mutants. Both have access to very potent armor ups. Both have ability accuracy immunity against mutants. Both have access to respective damage over time effects. In case of Nimrod, it's shock. In case of Mega Sentinel, it's incinerate or plasma. Both have access to burst damage on level 3s. Both have access to regen. Nimrod is level 3. On Omega Sentinel, it's whenever she gets poisons or bleeds inflicted upon her. Both of them are obviously robots. Both can easily deal with regeneration that opponents have. Nimrod replaces with shock. Omega Sentinel has heal block, which again, they do it slightly differently, which can have its ups and downs for various reasons. Both punish prowess buffs. Omega Sentinel places more incinerates on her level 2s for each prowess opponents have. Nimrod again converts them into shock, and both can be used well with virtually any mastery setup. You can run them with liquid courage, double edge, or without. So there's definitely a ton of similarities, and by that process alone, there is no real bad decision. Regardless which champion you will choose, I personally believe both of them are absolutely fantastic. They are extremely similar in their overall quality and potency to kind of sort out your problems. So I do think that it doesn't make that big of a difference which one you rank up. Both of them are absolutely amazing. Obviously, I do have my preference. However, let's go over where they're different. What's different in between Omega Sentinel and Nimrod? And we're going to start with Omega Sentinel. So, well, first things first, Omega Sentinel does have top 5 prestige. If prestige does not interest you, you can completely ignore this point. For a lot of people, that is quite important. Then, one of the biggest things Omega Sentinel has that Nimrod doesn't is nullify immunity. And that is absolutely huge, because not many tech champions have nullify immunity in their kit. I believe only other one is like Civil Warrior, who sucks. Now, Omega Sentinel also can bypass miss, which obviously is a huge piece of utility, and she doesn't just bypass miss, she bypasses miss extremely well. You can have 100% uptime on your tracking debuff, and that's it. You're just never going to miss in a fight, so it's quite easy to do. Omega Sentinel also has permanent armors, unlike Nimrod's temporary armor buffs, which can make a significant difference against several nodes when you have buff duration reduction, or when you have mystic defenders, for instance. Not only you'd have nullify immunity, but also because your armors are permanent, they do not expire, therefore they do not feed mystic dispersion. So there are quite few inherent advantages to having permanent armor buffs. She does have auto block safety net, even though it doesn't have full 100% uptime, because whenever you throw special attack, you do have to kind of build your armor ups back up to 10. But it has saved my skin more than its fair share at the same time. Omega Sentinel does have huge energy resist, which is quite unique. I believe she can get some of the biggest energy resistance in the game if she is at 10 armor ups, which definitely can be helpful. should be even more helpful if she could benefit from willpower, but still. Now, another thing is pseudo-immunities. Pseudo-immunities can be better or can be worse at times. Obviously, on Omega Sentinel, they're kind of worse because she doesn't benefit from willpower. She just doesn't take damage from those debuffs, but she still gets the debuffs, which means that many nodes do activate, like reducing ability accuracy, or like recently we had Balgron's node where opponents can go unblockable if you have 3 debuffs and so forth. So again, there are some good things because that is how her regeneration ability works, and obviously that can help you tremendously. But at the same time, like as a very basic example, use Omega Sentinel against Immortal Abomination. Yes, you're not going to take damage from poison, but if you're going to be aggressive in the fight and going to get yourself up to 10 poisons, it's going to convert into Acid Wash and you're going to get wrecked immediately. So again, it has its ups, it has its downs, but it's definite, difference there to keep in mind. And without a doubt, I fully think that Omega Sentinel has much better long Everest type fight damage. Like, I think Nimrod's damage is better in short fights, in like Alliance War, Alliance Quest, and casual questing, but I do think Omega Sentinel has better damage in, pretty much any fight that's 500,000 or 800k and upwards. I do think Omega Sentinel finishes Labyrinth of Legends fights quicker. Unless you're going against very, very specific opponents that spam regeneration and prowess all the time. But in general, I do think that Omega Sentinel quite clearly has the better long fight damage. That being said, let's move on to the Nimrod's points. Nimrod obviously has the level 2 nuke, and that level 2 nuke is an absolute insane weapon for Alliance War and for much of casual questing. It doesn't have the biggest base damage, but when it comes to short length fights, whether you only go straight to level 2 or go for level 1 then level 2, because of the improved power gain, it's also a very quick rotation and it is very massive amount of damage early on. So that, in my opinion, kind of puts Nimrod ahead of Omega Sentinel in majority of the short fights. Now, Nimrod also ignores armor break, which is again quite a unique thing in tech class. Now, if Omega Sentinel is Nullify and Stagger immune and Fate Seal immune, then Nimrod can not care less about armor break, which again can have massive uses, because whenever you armor break Nimrod, armor break potency is reduced by 100%. On top of that, he doesn't lose his armor ups, so you can use him in matches where you cannot Omega Sentinel, for instance. Now, he has massive damage and crit damage resistance. Massive damage resistance is similar to Omega Sentinel. However, Omega Sentinel's health pool is significantly smaller than Nimrod's, but he also takes virtually no crit damage whenever he's in Titan or Eradicate protocols. Therefore, if you know what you're doing, he can be like one of the tankiest champions in the game. I think I have tanked a special 3 from Act 7 boss by losing like 4% health. He can be an absolute monster in damage mitigation. Again, both of them do have damage mitigation in one way or another, but I think overall Nimrod has more health, he is kind of tankier. Now, Nimrod also has full immunities instead of the pseudo immunities, but one of the cooler things that I absolutely love about Nimrod, and I think is absolutely underrated, is his power control. Whenever an opponent throws a special attack, they immediately get a power drain debuff that lasts for quite a long time. They can even get a couple of those, and that makes fights much, much, much easier. And lack of power control is kind of glaringly noticeable often with the Omega Sentinel, which is something that I'm going to get to in a moment. Nimrod also has access to Unstoppable, and Potent Energize is also super helpful to be able to drop more special attacks. There are obviously more small differences, like Nimrod has Energy Vulnerability, but it's effectively just like a damage boost, and so on and so forth. So where do I lie personally, right? We have went over pretty much everything that they have in common, their biggest differences, but there are also many intangibles when it comes to using both of these champions. I think majority of MCOC as a game is structured where champions that are better at short fights excel more and are used more often. It's kind of, again, the difference of these ramp-up Everest champions. Obviously, they have their uses and they have their points, but most of the time you will go with whichever champion finishes your most common fights quicker, be that Alliance War, be that Alliance Quest, be that casual questing, and overall that is Nimrod in most of the cases. So that is one massive big argument, in my opinion, for Nimrod over Omega Sentinel. The second thing is that Nimrod has much simpler playstyle and rotations. There are less things to keep in mind. There's significantly less timer watching. You do not necessarily care whether you're at max armor ups. Obviously, the more the better, but it's not quite as big of an important thing as it is with Omega Sentinel. At the same time, you do not need to kind of keep constant eye on the duration of the debuffs and everything else. So overall, Nimrod is easier to use. And whilst obviously not a disqualifying factor, but if you have two champions that deal with a specific fight in a very similar, level of effectiveness, but one of them is significantly easier to use, obviously that is a champion that you will want to use just to lower the potential of your mistakes. So Omega Sentinel is definitely playable. It's not like, Omega Sentinel, you need to be like a very good Tiger player or Quake player, but still, there are more limitations. Like you always want to fight where you ideally are able to drop your heavy attacks, or it's not impossible, but it gets harder to use Omega Sentinel. Then you are much more affected by uncooperative AI whenever you are using Omega Sentinel, because if you have pushed opponent to 2+ bars of power, he doesn't want to throw that special attack. Well, then all of your debuffs and big amount of your damage can go to wayside, versus that's not an issue with Nimrod. Now, on the upside, compared to many other champions, Omega Sentinel can kind of like rectify that mistake and, regain a very solid damage output quickly. It's not like with Invisible Woman or Star-Lord, where if you make a mistake, you have to start all over and it's going to take forever to kind of get to the point where you were. With Omega Sentinel, it's kind of like much easier and quicker to regain a good amount of damage, but still, it is, a kink in Omega Sentinel's armor, so to speak. So, uncooperative AI, Nimrod is definitely a much, much better option in most cases, especially combined with his power control, so you do not have to bait out as many special attacks, and if they don't throw those special attacks, it's fine. You lose a lot less. Nimrod is not really kind of like a momentum or a tempo fighter. Omega Sentinel is more so. So all of those things combined, as well as the simple fact that Nimrod does have like bigger health pool, in my opinion, and whilst both of them have massive armor ratings and both of them are absolute tanks, whilst you're not really getting hit, but with Nimrod, in between his huge armor rating and critical damage resistance, it just feels like that it's more safe option most of the time. In majority of the fights, Nimrod finishes the fights quicker as well. So overall, for me personally, I prefer Nimrod. Now, I don't think that there is a big difference in between Omega Sentinel and Nimrod. As I stated before, I do think they are very comparable. I think much of it is also in personal preference and, personal preference in playstyles. I know for a fact, for instance, one of my best friends in MCOC, White Mummy, prefers Omega Sentinel over Nimrod. And that's fair enough. And, he prefers her for the same exact reasons that I kind of explained here, what she's amazing at. At the same time, the coolest thing about these champions are that they complement each other extremely well, not to make each other redundant. They have amazing synergies in between one another. Whenever you synergize Omega Sentinel with Nimrod, you activate like 4 synergies automatically. I'm going to demonstrate that in just a second. So with obviously Nimrod, all of the champions gain all of the robots gain 225 attack bonus if you add an Omega Sentinel. Then Nimrod gains extra armor rating based on missing health. Also, if a robot is defeated, you basically, whenever you revive, you regenerate much more health as well on Omega Sentinel or Nimrod. Then on top of that, if you combine Omega Sentinel with Nimrod also, if your opponent is shock immune, then instead you inflict Incinerate, which obviously can be super helpful. And massive thing is that robots gain 5% combat power rate for each shock on the opponent. And when you're going to be using Omega Sentinel has a synergy with Nimrod that's going to be placing a ton of small passive shocks on the opponent whenever they throw special attacks. So Omega Sentinel gains a significant increase in her combat power rate. So yeah, as I said, it's like 4 synergies that activate as soon as you add both of these on the same team. And as I explained before, just in between the differences that one is nullify immune, one is armor break immune. One bypasses miss, one doesn't. One has, power control, one doesn't. They both work extremely well and best as a synergy duo in most cases. And that is how I most often like to use them, because Omega Sentinel immediately becomes much more snappy champion with more power gain, which is one of the kind of like bigger problems with the character as well, in my opinion. That it can be quite slow to build up to your level 2s and stuff. It becomes less of a problem if you have Nimrod on your team. Nimrod overcomes his weakness of shock immune opponents, simply inflicting incinerates, so on and so forth. So ultimately, I think if you have these champions, you're eventually going to end up ranking up both of them. And you should, because both of them are absolutely amazing. I enjoy using both. I think both represent tremendous value. But if I had to keep one, it would be Nimrod. I would not want to give away Omega Sentinel, but it would be Nimrod that I keep. So there you go. Personally, slightly prefer Nimrod over Omega Sentinel, but again, I can easily see people who think otherwise. But I think overall this video did a fairly decent job kind of highlighting the commonalities of Omega Sentinel and Nimrod, the differences, what I prefer. Again, Nimrod due to easier playstyle, due to being tankier, due to finishing up most of the casual fights quicker. But that doesn't mean that Omega Sentinel doesn't have a place right next to Nimrod. And yeah, I think, eventually you're going to end up racking up both of them, because both of them are phenomenal. Either way, let me know which one you prefer. Let me know what you thought of this video. Do not forget about the Quicksilver giveaway. That's going to be concluding on Tuesday, so you have up until Tuesday to submit your entry. I will leave all the relevant information and links in the video description. And yeah, drop a like or something. I'm going to catch you guys soon. See ya. Hello there guys, and welcome back to the channel. So we have all the information about the next